Welcome back to the channel. You're watching Rock Haven Customs. We're going to start on this second gen Dodge, so stay tuned and we'll discuss everything that's going to go on with this truck. So we've changed position of where my camera is. I made a little L piece here. It's attached to my workbench, so you get an overview of the truck while I'm working or whatever project we're on. So I've got this second gen Dodge that I've kind of started on. I've cut it apart, done a little bit of a roll pan on it, put a cowl hood on it, and did a filler panel in the back. So the plans for this truck, if you follow me on Instagram, we started a Jeep project a couple days ago, and now that I know as far as the suspension, how the suspension works to make it work up and down, I've kind of wanted to go back to this project here. So this is going to be a long build. It will be a drawn out build, but I will try to stay focused on this project. I'd really like to get it built and be able to put it on the shelf. So this is going to be a lot of talking in this video, explaining what I do to build this project. So if you don't want to watch this long drawn out thing, and I'm not going to have it too long. So I need to put a piece of tape back here because, like I said, I've changed my position of where the camera is, and I won't be able to kind of keep some guidelines of where this is in the shot. So just bear with me real fast so that I can see on camera and try to stay in this parameter while I'm building so that we know that everything is in picture. So this is my area here that we're going to work out of, and I think this is going to be a better view for people so they can see straight down on what everything's going on. So, like I said, the second gen Dodge, I don't know if it's a 12 valve or 24 valve. It really does not matter to me. Mine's a 24 valve, 6-speed. But like I said, we've got the roll pan on. We've put the cowl hood on and we split it. What I want to do is, first thing we've got to figure out is our axle span, because I'm not going to use the factory Dodge frame. I have one over here that I got years ago and I've lost the chassis to it, so we will keep this for that truck. So we're going to set it off to the side, and I'm not sure about the glass, what we're going to do about that. I may try to make some glass, and I've got something in mind that I'm going to try to do on that also. So as you know, I build a lot of my stuff in brass. I just enjoy building in brass more than I do styrene or any other components. So what I've got here is what it's going to take for the majority of the build. There is a few pieces that I will need that I've got, but we'll get to that in a later video. So to start off, I've got to figure out and I'm going to try not to make this a boring video, but you have to go through the processes that I go through to be able to build what I build and know where everything's got to be placed, because there's a lot of time in mock-up, and I could show you all the projects behind me that are just half finished, but I lose interest in them because you figure one part out and so you don't want to fool with it anymore. It's just that my mind thinks that if you can just get that one thing made and make it function, it's good and I'm done with it. So I've got to try to get my mind out of that. And I'm going to also talk about some other things in some of these videos that explains certain things, why I'm not showing you what I'm doing. This is some things I want to discuss and talk about. But anyways, let's get back to this. So we know we want a little bit of travel on the truck to be able to move up and down. And I'm going to try to explain this the best I can and try to make this an educational video so that you know, and I will show you what I use and I've showed in the past. That way you can go out and buy what you need to do this same thing. And if you ever learn how to solder brass, you'll never go to nothing else. I mean, it's a little more expensive, but it's so much nicer builds. So I want about that much lift. Let me zoom the camera down some and try to keep it in our parameter here so that y'all can watch a little better. So I want to be able to, and I have to remember that this is straight up and down now and keep everything flat. I want to be able to make the truck have some wheel clearance and not just way up in there. So as far as stance, that is where I've got to figure out as far as how far I want my tires to stick out and the look that I want. As you can see, the tread on the tires, hopefully you can see it. Yeah. So I want a little bit more than half sticking out. So what I'm going to do, and on the back of the wheels, these are just some Jada wheels or something I've pulled off. And like I said in the previous videos, I'd rather use these. I mean, I know everybody's used them in the past, but I think they're still a good looking wheel and we can make them look a lot better than what they are. But they've got a nub on the back, and you know, the way things are nowadays, you know, everybody's putting spacers on trucks, so it kind of looks like a spacer. So we're going to take this rod, and this rod is, I'm not sure what it is. It's 95 thousandths is what this rod is. Once I tear something out of a package, I have no idea what it is as far as size. But I know the outside diameter, the ID is almost 100 thousandths. So looking at the truck, I know that these wheels, like I said, have a nub on the back. So I know that if you flip the truck up like this, the wheel is about the inside of the rim, wheel, whatever y'all want to call it, is almost to the hood right here. So we're going to take a rod, and I've already measured, and do it about 1 inch. And I already know that because I measured and everything. So it's about a 1 inch rod. So we're going to take a rod and take my knife here and find that spot and just roll it a little bit, and most time it'll break this. Let me zip around and just cut it real quick. It's a lot faster. So this is going to be our axle for our truck. We're just going to file this tip a little bit just to kind of clean it up. Okay, then we're going to take a knife and go in here and clean out inside the axle tube. Okay. Now we got to find something to stick inside the wheel to be able to hold it for our axle. And what I want to do is I want to take the next size, which is this here, and we're going to slide it in so we've got a little bit of play. Now, like I said, this is going to be a long video, not this video, but it's going to be a long thing to be able to make this video, because I just really want to dedicate my time to this build. I don't know how long it will take us to build it, but I want to show you from start to finish. Other than like the F350, I've kind of went a different direction with it, but I want to focus on this and get it built, because I've yet to build a really nice truck, and I just want to build a second gen. Just because I own one, and I've messed with them and messed with them and messed with them and never have ever built one completely. So now, as you can see, this tube is bigger than the hole in the wheel rim, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to drill it out. So this is about a 62 thousandths piece of brass. Get my little drill bits out here and find a 62 thousandths drill bit. That one's 40. This one is a 50. I think this one's a little too big, but it may not. It's a 50. What's this one? All right, so we're going to use this one. This one's a little bit smaller. And I don't know if I've said, but invest in one of these pin vices, because a drill is great, but sometimes with these, the reason I like using them is when you use a drill, a lot of times you get the hole way too big because of the heat that transfers through the bit, and it causes it to make the hole bigger than what it needs to be. So just a little tidbit of information. Plus you got more control over this. Now that's really tight, which is good. So that way my wheels won't fall off, but we're just gonna run it just a little bit more in there. And then we're gonna take something and just kind of tap that down in there. Okay. So now we have our wheel on our axle going through our axle tube. Okay. Now this is where you have to figure out what you're going to do as far as your suspension. Now I know that I want to build a true frame with this and everything on it. So you've got to count in some things and consider. I'm probably gonna put my coils right on the edge to be able to get a frame in here, because I don't want the frame to be so narrow it doesn't look realistic. So I'm gonna go in just a shade on my axle tube. So let's mark it. We're gonna put a axle, and plus, okay, and I'm talking to y'all because this is the way I talk to myself when I'm building. This is your springs, and all I took was some music wire. That's like 15 thousandths music wire. You can pick this up at, I mean, you can go to a music store and get guitar string. I mean, it's the same thing. They've got different gauges on the guitars. I mean, I play guitar and everything, so I've got strings somewhere, but this is just some, I think I got this at Hobbytown USA, which is a hobby store close to where I live. But you've also got to think where your spring's going to set, because the way we're going to build this is going to be different from the way I made this. Let me take this spring off because I haven't fabbed it up where I couldn't take it off, because I don't, they're a little too big for me for what I wanted to use. They're a little bit too big. So we're just gonna set this to the side. What I did on these springs is made a bottom hoop, a top hoop, and then my sleeve so that it would function. Now there's a lot into building this little piece. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 components to this right here spring. So we're gonna set this to the side. So now that you know how that one was built, on a real Dodge, they have a plate on the axle housing. It's just a flat plate where the coil spring sets into, and then it comes up, and then it's got a, on the top where your piece is, you've got a hoop that kind of comes up and goes down, and on 3 sides, if you was looking at a top view, let's see if you can see that. Let me get a different pen so you can kind of see. That's why all this stuff is on my workbench, because I draw on it all the time. You got a hoop on the top, and it's got a hole for your shot to come through. Well, then you've got a ordeal like this, and it's got another ring that goes around, and it's got another plate that sets there, which is what your spring sets up inside to hold your suspension. I mean, I could walk out there and show you on mine, but that's kind of the basics to it. So on this, I want to make, well, never mind. On this, I want to take the spring and let it sit right on top of the axle. Because the way the design is that I'm going to try to do this, that's how I'm going to do it. But I still will put a top ring like this, I think. I'm not sure. But the reason we're going to do this, I have a new idea on building all this. So we're going to take this brass here, which this brass slides up inside this brass. As you can see, it goes back and forth. A cylinder. Where's my Scotch-Brite? I'm gonna clean this a little bit because it is a little oxidized and just got stuff on it. So we're gonna clean this up just a little bit. to make it a little more smooth. Now this may be, like I said, a boring video to y'all, but I'm sure there's some that would like to see kind of how this assembly works. So back to the spring. I'm going to set the spring just to the inside of the axle tube. So therefore, and all this will start making sense. And I'm just going to make this one for today. Like I said, this is going to be a long video of parts. So we're going to mark that right there to make sure that I'm right, that's going to work. So what we've got to do is drill a hole. That's why I say these pin vices are very handy. We're going to drill a hole in the center of this tube right where that is. So I'm going to stop the video, do that, and then I'll show you what we got after that. All right, so I got my hole drilled. As you can see, I drilled my hole through the tube, but as you also see, it does not go all the way through. It's just on the top side. And the reason being is we're going to take this rod and stick it inside that hole to solder. So we're going to get this soldered up. Move this back out of the way. And all this, like I said, will start making sense in a few minutes once we get going on it. So we're going to put that there. I'm going to use one of my blocks so you can still see. Let me zoom you in so you can see that. We're going to get a little bit of our, and so this is a total off subject. I've used different products throughout my soldering life. This here is this here. If you want to order you some, a lot of people ask me what I use, what I need, and all that. So this is what I use. I used to use, and I ran out, which there's still a little bit in it. This is some good flux. It's liquid flux. Now this is another thing that I use, but this is not technically for what I'm doing, but it works very well. I use this soldering iron. It's a WP35. As you can tell, it's pretty messed, just kind of bad on the end, but what I do, let me get to zoom back out real quick. I'll take just some paste that I get like Lowe's or Home Depot and just run it in there, and it cleans the end and retins it. So if you want to know that, that's, and then as far as solder, gotta find it. Here it is. I use this solder. That's what I use as far as soldering. And I get all that off of eBay. It's the best place I found to get it, and it works. So we're gonna zoom back down. All right, now we're zoomed down. Now something I wanna say, you know, then being if we got the hole drilled all the way through, I'm gonna take a piece of this stainless steel rod and slide through the axle, and you'll see why in just a moment. So we've got our axle, our stainless piece drilled through our axle here, or run through our axle. We're gonna get our piece back on top, or close to that. And then we're gonna take our piece we're going to use for part of our shop, and set it inside the hole. Then we're going to take a helping hand and clamp it so it will stay in place. And then we're going to take a little bit of our solder and just put a little bit around the edge of it there. Get our iron hot or tinned. We're going to come in here and heat this up. Let that cool off, and I'll show you the reason why we use the little piece inside it. Take our block off, take our helping hand off, and then see this still goes through, so now we can run our axle through our truck or our piece here. Maybe just a little bit tight there, so I may need to clean that out. So that's a 62 thousandths drill bit. We'll throw this in our pin vise here. Just clean that a little bit out. Maybe just a little bit of solder that went down inside of it. We need to clean it out a little bit. Okay. Yeah, it just needs a little bit of, see our wheel. I'm still gonna have to do some work on these rims, wheels, whatever. So now we've got our axle tube and our axle to where we can look at our lift. So we're gonna go about right there with the suspension. So we'll cut it here. Now you do waste a little bit of brass doing all this, but it's not that a whole lot. So as you can see, we've got to have our travel for our spring to run up inside. So now that we know that part, we need to take our tube that we're going to use for our the upper part. And now this will work up and down. So the trowel that I want, we're going to cut this down about like that. And now we configure our top part. Need to put our wheel back on. Where's our wheel at? Okay. So there's that. There's that. So we're going to go about there. And cut this about right there. So let me zip around here and cut this real fast. Okay, clean this up real fast. All right, so now we've got this part and this part for our shock. And that gives me my travel up and down. Then you take your spring and slide it on there, and that will give you your compression for all that. So now we've got to take a piece and make a top for it. So what we're going to do is solder a piece of that on top of there. So I need to scuff this just a little bit. Throw it a bond. Clean that a little bit. All right, so these two pieces will go together, like so. Put a little flux on it, and then we'll tack this together. Now, something to know that when you're soldering brass, if you use a Dremel, if you get it too hot, you'll break your joint loose, and I know that because I've done it from experience. There's that side. Now that is a little crooked, but we're gonna fix it real fast here in just a second. I just want to get some solder down there, and then what we're gonna do is heat this up, and then I can take this piece and adjust it around. So now you've got your piece that will mount to the frame. Okay, let me cut this off. All right, let me scuff this up just real fast and get these burrs off. Like I said, when you're using a Dremel builds up heat and will actually break your joint loose if you're not careful. So you want to kind of do it in small increments of soldering it down. Kind of let the solder cool back down. All right, so now we've got this and this, and we've got that part. Now we'll look at this again and see how our suspension looks, which that's too tall for me. As you can tell, it's way up in there. We need to shorten this part up. So I'm just going to cut that off a little bit. Sand it down. See if that looks a little better. Like I said, a lot of this is a lot of time that goes into it. Now I could have probably made this a lot quicker, not explaining everything, but I wanted to explain it. help y'all out. Need to drill that out. There's a shade. So that y'all kind of see how this works. Now let's see what our suspension looks like. Now I like that. But it's bottomed out. So now I've got to cut a little more off to be able to have our travel, which I'm gonna cut it about right there. I'm just gonna take my dice, cut it off, then we'll sand it down. Run this drill bit through here, tilt it back up. Okay. Let me clean this tip off. Just flatten it down a little bit. The spring's not going, or the bottom part's not going as far up into the shock, upper part of the shock as I'd like. So I need to probably drill it out a little bit. There's probably solder that's got down inside here. From where I soldered this part to it. Probably got inside the tube. Let's try it now, let's see, because this spring should, or the shock should go all the way down. Okay, so that's better. I need to file this down right here. I'm just filing on the axle tube itself to try to get some of this solder cleaned up so the spring will set flat for right now. So now we can cut our spring. And all I did with this is I took the rod that I run through here, which I don't know what I've done with. Anyways, I just took it and run it around it to make my spring. So we're gonna take our spring and open it up just a little bit. And we want our full travel for our spring. So it's going to be right around there somewhere. And if it's not quite where you want it, you can always pull your spring apart and gain some to get the full travel, because this will separate. So we're a little too stiff now, or too tall. So I'm just gonna kind of Squeeze it back down to get it to close up because I pulled it too far. All right. As you can see, our spring works. So now you see why I went through everything as far as showing you the reason why I do everything on this build. So we'll run our tube back in there. And then when this is all the way out, when we get our frame built, we'll be able to tie this, we'll drill the hole back out in that, put a piece coming out of the frame and allow it to set there. So then your suspension will travel on your truck, as you can see. So that's going to wrap this video up. I'll build the other side, get the other side built, and then I'll show you the control arms of how all that's assembled and how that's made, like I did on this Jeep here, with all the holes and all the drop bracket on the frame. So I hope this was educational, and something I'm going to touch on real fast on this video, then I'll go into it more on the next video, is, and this is hard for even me, don't buy what everybody else has got or what everybody else is building. And I need to learn that on my own, because I have a bad habit of, oh, well, somebody's got one of these, well, I need to find this and hunt this down and get this. Build what you think is cool. Build what you like. And I know this from experience, and I ought to look in the mirror when I say this. You'll sink a lot of money in this hobby. Buying stuff and doing this because, oh, well, somebody else has got this or somebody else has got that. Perfect example, these second-gen Dodges. Everybody and their brother wants them that's in the truck game, that's building these because somebody else has got it or whatever. Think outside the box. And I'm going to show you something, if I can find it real fast. Yeah, here's one. And I follow a lot of people on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, but mostly Instagram and YouTube. This truck here. Let me zoom the camera back out a little bit. This Earl F-350. Now, I haven't seen what one goes for in a while. I don't know. I've got a couple of them. And don't do this just because I said this. You know, these used to be a dime a dozen. And if you don't know, Lacey Blair had a black F-350 with semi wheels on it years ago, before she got her Escalade and her silver Dodge that she had. You know, this is a cool little build. Paint it black, put some semi wheels on it. You know, if you ain't following her on Instagram, go look at her old builds of what she had. Another example, Dude Lovejoy. I can't think of his real name. Anyways, he had old Dodge. You can pick these up pretty inexpensive. His is a 4-door, I believe. Yes, it's a 4-door. And I've got the other half of this somewhere that I'm gonna build. I think his is a 4-door. Yeah, it is. You know, do something like that. There's plenty of trucks and cars out there that you can do, that you don't have to buy have one of these, or go outside the box, think outside the box, and build something that you like, that you think's cool. And you know, if people don't like it, who cares? As long as it's what makes you happy when you build it, that's what you need to do. So that being said, I'll go more into it later while we build this. Hope you enjoyed this. I know it was probably boring and it's kind of long, but you know, for those that really want to learn the brass work and all that, I'll show you completely on this build. You can get whatever I use. I mean, there's nothing secret, and you know, you can build some stuff out of brass, and it's very enjoyable. But now I'm ranting and just talking and blabbing. But like I said, I hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you in a couple of days, and hope everybody has a good week. Talk to you later.